Something that I didn't know that we didn't touch on last time is that you wanted to bring out the healthiest, strongest boy first, but they chose who they thought, this is so divine. So they were in the cave choosing who they thought should go first based on who lived furthest away, who would have to get on their bicycle once they got out and cycle home, which is just so. I mean, they didn't even have an understanding of the fact that so many people were outside waiting for them, and they definitely wouldn't have to go on their bikes and cycle home. So they chose who would go first, and it wasn't the person that you wanted, which was the healthiest and strongest. It was literally the person that lived the furthest away from the cave.
Yeah, and I didn't believe that was true when I first got told that that's the order that they came out with, because I completely lost track of who was who. And I thought, I'm sure that these four big lads were supposed to come first, and, that was explained to them. And when Craig and I and the British guys came back the next day, and suddenly these kids are all coming down the hill. I mean, they're all dressed with their hoods on. I couldn't tell them apart. I'd only met them once briefly the day before. And so I completely lost track of who was who. And all of that was fine until the last day, when suddenly the last boy to come down that hill, I was expecting to be quite a large kid. And he turned out to be the smallest of all the boys, a boy called Mark, who was only 29 kilograms. And
Wow.
Jason Mallinson, the last British diver, and myself alone in there with this boy. And I suddenly realised the mask that we've got for him is not going to fit, because we'd used up all the other decent masks for the previous four boys, including the coach, as it turned out. And the masks that we had, we had two masks to choose from. One was a mask that was literally 1.5 times the width of this boy's face. It was never going to keep the water out. And the second one was this little pink recreational diving mask, which had very soft seals around it, and it was folding up and collapsing on his face, and didn't seem to be sealing at all well. So eventually the boy had been anaesthetised, and the longer he stayed in the water, the colder he was going to get. Eventually I said to Jason, look, you're just going to have to go, and good luck to you. And how Jason got that boy out alive really is a testament to Jason's skill and care with that child all the way out.
And I suppose, as you said, the risk for you was if you don't bring them out, they're going to die. So if you bring them out and they die, well, they were going to kind of die anyway, because that cave was going to flood and they weren't going to be alive anymore. So you had that. But I wonder, from your research and this new book you've got, why do you think some people are wired to take more risks than others?
Wow, that's a huge question, and I guess that's the whole premise of the book is, maybe taking a step back. For a long time, people have said to me, with my interest in what a lot of people consider to be a terrifying sport to be involved with, that is cave diving, people have often said to me, "Oh, you must be mad to do that," and I've never felt at all crazy. I've felt like I'm very cautious, actually, and not at all courageous or brave. I just have found this thing that I love doing, and I've grown to love it through very incremental exposure to it. I didn't leap into the sort of cave that I was faced with in Thailand the first day I took up cave diving in the 1980s. There's no way I would have survived that sort of cave dive back when I started. But like all people who gain mastery over a small niche activity, I guess you do it very slowly and incrementally, and you build up experience, and you push your horizons further out each time you dive, and you become a bit more accomplished until you look back and you can't believe how far you've come in that activity or sport. And I think that's the same for all adventurers, whether you're a mountain climber or a caver or whatever activity you do. You don't go up Mount Everest on your first day out. You go up the hills behind your house to start with, and you build from there. So I think you learn to be a risk taker as much as have a genetic predisposition to it. I mean, risk is a part of all of us. It's a vital part of the human condition to take risks, because for our personal growth, unless we take a risk from the moment we're born and step outside our familiar surroundings, whether that's outside the little fence that mum and dad have put up around you to stop you wandering close to the fire, or those sorts of things. And then when you're a school-age kid, if you're lucky enough to ride your bike to school, you start, maybe checking out some side streets on the way home with your little gang and going to the park and not quite telling mum and dad what you're up to after school every day. And that's really important because we
Yes.
need to push those little boundaries, whether they're geographical or emotional or the boundaries that have been put upon us by our carers. We have to push against those boundaries constantly to grow and develop normally. And that's a vital part of life. And we forget that risk-taking is important to each and every one of us. And people think that they can hide from risk. Well, that's even in this very, very safe time in which we live, especially in a privileged country like Australia for most of us. We forget that the world is a dangerous place still, and we need to occasionally test ourselves to build courage and resilience for the hazards that lie ahead. And even, for people like ourselves, Sarah, I think, life has still potentially got challenges in it, whether it's, a health crisis or a relationship crisis or a career crisis. There's always big potholes in the road.
Absolutely.
And if we've never had to face any kind of moral or physical hazards in our life, then the first time there is a little speed hump, we're gonna fall at the first hurdle, to use about 8 metaphors in one sentence.